Hello, hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Okay, I don't see anybody in yet. I know you guys are coming in. I want to get started. It's late here on the East Coast. So we're going to begin in just a little bit. If you're watching the replay, please comment, like, just engage and let me know that you're around. The topic for today's live is how to prepare for an initial IEP meeting. A lot of times we just remember the annuals. We just remember what's happening year to year. But like I posted in a lot of the groups leading up to today, the more that we can understand the initial, right, the better questions that we will probably be able to ask during the annual. So it serves as good preparation um, to remember and review the initial and to take steps in preparing for the annual. So great. Okay, so how to prepare for an initial IEP meeting. Um, as I get started, I really want to lay some context. I really want to begin to speak and give you some context about what is an IEP, right? I know that in the group we have some early intervention providers, which is great. We love early intervention. Early intervention is available in all 50 states, right? Different, it may be provided different. The eligibility may be different in all 50 states, but it's available, right? In all 50 states. In early intervention, we see IFSP, right? And that F stands for family because the nature of the IEP is like home and family based. But starting in preschool, we learn about the IEP, right? The parents of children with special needs become familiar with an IEP, an individual educational plan. So there's a couple of acronyms that I want to start with just to give some context before we go into the meat and then how to prepare. So the first one is IDEA, right? A lot of you might know that, the Individuals with Disability Act. That is legislation. Qué pena que no tenga traductor. Oh, hi, Nancy. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to speak slowly for you. I'm so sorry. This one is in English, but I will have other meetings and I will have them in Spanish. It's nice to see you here, Nancy. Me gusta verte en esta tarde. I'm going to continue, okay? And when we have questions, you can post them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer you, okay? And so, cuando tengas preguntas, por favor, escríbalo y yo voy a tratar a contestarla. So, we have IDEA, and that's just federal legislation on individuals, right, with disabilities educational act, right? So how the laws that are protecting individuals with disabilities. Then we have FAPE, FAPE, and that's an acronym for free, appropriate public education. And so all children, whether they are eligible for special education or not, are entitled to FAPE, a free, appropriate public education. And then we have LRE, and that's really vital to understand that term. It means the least restrictive environment. So lots of times I have meetings with parents. I'm sure some of the service providers in the group can attest that parents always want more. They always want more services. They always want more. But really, in the trajectory of growth, it doesn't always show that more is better. So the coming down from state education, right? In all 50 states, the state says you have to give room. You have to provide programming that's the least restrictive environment, right? And really evaluate that IEP to see, is it necessary that a child for all 380 minutes of the day is only with other kids with disabilities, with 3 adults in the classroom, and just, not able to function and with some more independence. All right, so the purpose of IDEA is to ensure FAPE, right? That legislation is to ensure that kids with disabilities have a free, appropriate public education. The details of how the school district is going to provide FAPE is outlined in a legal document called an IEP. Okay, so just in short, the IEP is an explanation of how the school district is going to provide your child with a disability with a free and appropriate public education. So an IEP includes a lot, but for this sake, services, programs, accommodations, okay, additional personnel, for example, a nurse, a para, and whatever else the child needs to access the curriculum, okay? So let me go over the 3 steps because there's actually, it's more like 4. Did I add something at the, yeah, it's, we'll say 3. So the first one is referral, right? If you remember way back when the child was first evaluated, it was because somebody noticed an issue. It was because your child was not walking, maybe, right? On time. Or they were not, they just weren't developing in one of the 5 areas of human development. Something was off, right? Something wasn't right. If you take a look at my pathway to parent peace of mind, you'll see some of the questions, right, over time through my data, through my analysis that I've recognized parents ask, and feelings that parents have of something's not right, something's strange, right? And they think that way either because they have other children who are typically developing, they've grown fine with no problem, and they can tell this one is different, or they are in other places, right? Maybe the playground, other public areas, or there's cousins or extended family, and they compare that child and they say, well, wait, hold up. Something is not right. Something is different. And so for that reason, it could be a parent, it could be a teacher, it could be the doctor, it could be a service provider, right? Say, I think this child should be evaluated. All right. And so before we start the IEP process, the child is referred for an evaluation, right? At no cost when a disability is suspected. Okay. So that's just the first step. Submitting to the school district, submitting to the central special ed office. There's an issue here and we've recognized it. Before a referral is made, all other factors should be ruled out, right? So that means that before a child receives an occupational therapy evaluation, right, vision should be ruled out if that's an issue, right? Hearing is something that should be ruled out. Behavior, that's something that should be ruled out. Referral should be made with caution. So we cannot really do mass evaluations of the whole entire population, because I'll tell you, as a speech pathologist for over a decade now, if you look for something, if you look for a problem, you'll find a problem. Okay, so we can't just look, and we can't just dig, right? There really has to be a red flag. There has to be an indicator that's shown, and there has to be a reason. So referrals should be made with caution. And when it's a teacher making a referral, right, or any school personnel making a referral, there is a protocol, right? And it's called different things in different states, but basically it's tiered instruction. So if a child is in the regular general education population, and they're not doing well, they're struggling, they can't keep up, it's slow, it's a hard time, everything is laborious, there should be another level. They should be taken out in a small group, right? So all these things have to be tried before we can submit for a referral, right? So my area right now that I'm working in for the past 3 years has been preschool, right? And so I would say the children born in 2020 and 2021, they've been, I could say, in my whole career, the most difficult to assess, right? Because they were the kids who were in quarantine. So you've seen my post a week or two ago that I wrote, language has to be learned via socialization, right? Meaning that you can't just hang out and be a passive learner. There's no such thing as passively learning, right? You have to be engaged, motivated, and brought in to learn language. So for the children who were in quarantine, right, and they missed socialization and they were home with parents, maybe even grandparents, extended family who anticipated their needs. They didn't have to talk that much. And then a couple years later, I received as an administrator a preschool evaluation. It is hard because it's like, well, are you really? Is there really a true and organic disorder, or have you just been understimulated? So the referral process is important, and it's important to discern really what's going on. Let's move on to evaluation. So evaluations are just what they are, testing, right? Parents have to give, caregivers have to give consent for testing. The day that they sign that form for consent, it looks different in every school district. The day that they sign consent, then boom, the clock starts ticking and they have 60 days to get those evaluations done. So within 60 days of consent, those reports have to be done. And that's in all districts of all 50 states. That's the really cool thing about special education, right? There's federal law that's an umbrella for all of this. So everybody's playing by the same rules, just everybody has a different name. So that can be confusing. All right, next, step 2, eligibility, right? So does the child qualify for special education programs and services? That's the question. The referral's been put in, right? The child has had their appointments, have been scheduled. They've gone to their testing. They've had a psychological evaluation. They've had an observation. They've had a speech and language assessment. They've had an occupational therapy assessment, right? They've been observed in their classroom or observed in their home. Their parents have gotten a social history. The whole package is ready, okay, and is now given to the district administrator, whoever is the municipal representative, right, who's going to be the head of this case. It could be school psychologist, gets that packet, right, reads through it, and now calls a meeting and says, Mom, Dad, come. Everybody will go through the people who have to attend, but everybody comes together and we start this discussion about eligibility. Does he qualify or he does not qualify, right? And so what factors lead the team to believe that a child qualifies or doesn't qualify? And what factors lead the team to believe that the child requires less services or more services, right? So there is an administrator or a municipal representative, that's what the formal language says, who is in charge of making a decision. But it's a team effort, right? Okay. Step 3, okay, is placement. So after we've decided this is going to be the program, these are going to be the related services. This is going to be 10 months or this is going to be 12 months. We now talk about placement. So this looks different in every school district. Sometimes the child can stay in the same building and just be pulled out for a couple of sessions a week. Sometimes this means you can stay in the same building, but you go to a different class, whole new teacher, whole new peers. Sometimes this means you have to go to another building where they can really provide a specialized instruction you need and the therapies you need, right, for 12 months a year. So placement is important and it's complicated. Also, the time of year is very important, right? So even some programs that are 12 months a year, right, they do max capacity. right? So a child who wants to come in and is evaluated and eligible, qualifies in January might not get a seat, right? Because, um, you know, everybody's starting in September. School starting, really the new school year is in September, or sometime it's August, right? But the new school year starts August, September, difference in different states. So so September, October, November, December, January, we get to January, 5 months of the school year have passed, right? So those seats have really been maximized, right? There's no seats available. So placement is complicated and different everywhere that we go. And so that's really the gist of how the meeting goes, of initial testing, right? We have the referral, we have evaluation and eligibility, and placement. Okay, so let's talk about the team members really quickly. At an initial, the first IEP meeting, parents have to be there, or the caregiver, whoever signed that consent for assessment. Sometimes it could be a foster parent, biological parents, sometimes it's grandparents, adoptive parents, whoever is that caregiver. A special education teacher, a general education teacher if applicable. I told you guys that my niche right now is preschool, so I'm working with a lot of kids who've never been to school, so there is no gen ed teacher to really share their impressions. The representative of the school district, right, whether that's an administrator or a school psychologist. An educational professional who can interpret the evaluations. So most often, when a referral comes up and a child gets an appointment for testing, that can be anywhere. Some school districts use these independent agencies for testing, and so when we come to that first meeting, an employee from that agency should be able to speak interpretation of that test. And so when children are big enough, when they're 14 and older, they can also attend, right? If they want to, and if they're mature enough, and they really can. So something really important is parental rights. This is also referred to as procedural safeguards, right? And these are parental rights, and it's a couple of pages long, but I'll give you the gist of it, like the important points that you should know, which is just 3. The first one is you have the right, to open up a special education case because you'd have determined it appropriate and necessary. So you have the right to do that. The second one is, just because you come to this IEP meeting does not mean that you agree with the recommendation that's going to be made. So the administrator might say small class of 812, right? 8 children, 1 teacher, 2 assistants, speech therapy, occupational therapy. Just because you're there doesn't mean you agree with that recommendation. So that's a very important part of your procedural safeguard. And the last one is you have the right to close the case at any time. So for any reason, this process can go on. You could get to placement, right? And they could say next Wednesday, Sammy can come. We have a place for him. And if for any reason you have to move, or there is an emergency and the family needs to leave, or there's an issue, I've had several reasons why I've had to close cases. There's like 10 codes that it can happen. So you have the right to close the case at any time. Okay. So I want to give you some points on how to prepare for an initial IEP meeting. The first one is parents should always get those evaluations before the meeting starts. And so it's important to read that, right? They're so thick. Those about the packet with everybody's reports and with all of the documentation, they can run up to 40, 50 pages. But there's usually a summary that just condenses everything. And then there's some other, points. I would say read through the summary, scan the whole thing, and just come to the meeting knowing what the overall observations and impressions of the therapists and the psychologists and the teachers and what everybody thinks, right? It's important to glance at that. And then also, I part of my recommendations in preparing is to, when you read that, make sure that you see your child in there. Okay. There's a lot of copy and paste that goes on. You know, clinicians have a high volume of work. But also, the day that you went for that eval, that you took your child, it was just one day. It was a couple of hours with a stranger. So they don't really get to see the fullness and know the entirety of your child. You do, because you're with them every day, right? So make sure that your impressions align with the impressions of the clinicians, and that nothing's new. Nothing is like a gross misrepresentation of the truth. Okay. Always ensure that your medical is up to date. So part of this process in the referral stage is to submit the most recent physical from the doctor. I'm a mom. I know you got to keep up with that. You know, you have to keep up with the yearly visits, especially when they get to a certain age. They're not babies anymore. It's not every couple months, but every year you have to do it. And every state is kind of like different. Some want it done on their birthday. Some insurances want it a year, right, from the last one exactly, which might not be their birthday. So just check up on that medical, because some administrators won't even give you a meeting if that medical is not up to date. So, and then most certainly placement can't happen. You can't walk into a new school without that medical being up to date, right? And so that prolongs a process when it's a simple thing. Good. Research programs to suggest. So if you know that if your child's a little older and you know that what they really need, the program they need, the package they need is not available in the local public school, do some research beforehand. Take a look at programs, right? Do some research, read reviews, see if that's really going to be the best place. Okay. I always send parents out on tours. I always coordinate that for them. And it's two things that I ask for the schools to do for the parent. I ask for the parents to get a building tour, right? So just to walk the halls, go walk the floors, just kind of get a feel of what's going on. And then I ask the schools to do a classroom assessment. So just for a couple minutes, right? 10, 15 minutes, maybe 20, let the child enter that small class. If the recommendation, right, is an integrated class, right, which is a little more than half, like 60% kids typically developing gen ed, and the other 40% have some mild disabilities, and it's like a little mixed bag, an integrated class. Let your child sit in for a little while, right? So I would suggest that you do the research, right? Don't call and say, I'm coming in and I want to, before your meeting, right? Because you don't want to overstep your bounds and go someplace that you don't even know if your child is recommended for that. But do the research online, read the reviews, talk to other parents, and get a feeling of what your options are. Once you've had the meeting and some schools have been, or some programs have been recommended, right? Check them out. I always recommend that. Check them out. Confirm that the social history is accurate. So social history is the word that is used in my office, but during the evaluation process, there's always an interview with the parent and with like a social worker or somebody like that. Read that and make sure what you have reported is there and it's accurate, right? So that's important because it gives us a glimpse of your family life, family history, birth history, things that we can't see or measure with the standardized tests. So always read through that social history and see if it's accurate. Describe any medical diagnosis and the impact on learning, right? So I do, um, I do, I do meet families. I do meet children who, they might, have be cognitively fine. Average IQ, everything's going well, but then have some motoric deficits. They might need OT, and um, so the administrator may want to not recommend any programming at all. But if a parent comes out to say this is the disorder, these are the symptoms, this is the condition, this is how we manage it, that's more information to help make a better decision. Also talk about manifestations and presentations, right? So I've had meetings with a number of parents who experience seizures, right? And so that's not necessarily noticeable or something that's triggered daily, but it's important to know. In the vein of preparing for that initial IEP meeting, discuss LRE factors, okay? So let me tell you what's important about that. We already described that LRE is the least restrictive environment, okay? This is an important point to realize, so please catch it. Abnormalities and differences in nature happen at the rate of 10% and less, okay? So if we use that percentage and bring it into human development, abnormalities and special needs truly and really, right, delays and disorder, not delay, but disorder should only be happening at the rate of 10%. But we know that many school districts are under corrective action, and that there's a gross overrepresentation of children in special education. The truth is that there is no special supermarket, no special movie theater, there's no special of these things. We're all together in the real life, in the real world. So it's important, as a child gets older, most certainly, to make the environment less and less restrictive and give them more and more opportunities for independence. So talk about those options, okay? I already said to tour, ask for a tour, ask to see the setting, right, and then really sort of a clerical thing. So make sure that all addresses and all names, right, and all telephone numbers and email addresses are working and up to date, especially email addresses, right? Because since after COVID, we're really working electronically with a lot of things. We need a working email. If a person moved, right, in the midst of testing, it probably the old address will reflect. So it's just important to make sure that all of those things are up to date and accurate. So this was longer than I expected to be here. Let me know if you have any questions. I really enjoyed this. It was a long process, but it's important to know. And so I am going to ask you for a call to action this week. As you know, we think about the information that was presented. I want to know one question that you will ask at your next annual review meeting, based on what you've heard and your review of the process. What is one question that you will bring to your annual review? We can edit it, I can take a look at it, and we could really be prepared, right, to go into the next meeting confident and informed. So this was great. I really enjoyed it. And it was a good time. There are two things coming up. The Speech Lab Play Collective is going to be in the Bronx February 3rd, 4 p.m. So toddlers and their parents, you are welcomed. And then the winter webinar series is still going on. And February's theme is neurolinguistics and cultural diversity. So that should be a lot of fun. And then we're moving right along till March, and we'll talk about neurodivergent bilinguals. So I'm so excited to talk about that. Any questions, any comments, let me know. You can email me info@everycr.com, and I'm here for you. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.